Good morning, everybody. Hello, welcome, welcome. I hope you're having the gorgeous weather, as you can see that we're having here on the East Coast. I'm, excuse me, I am sorry it's been a while. There's been lots of reasons why I've not been able to come on. I've not been feeling great myself. My dad's been in hospital. He's now coming out today, so fingers crossed he's on the right path. I just want to say a big thank you to Reverend Nick for the credits that you've just seen. I think they are absolutely amazing. And speaking of said Reverend Nick, hello, dear.
Hey!
How are you, sir?
I'm not so bad. How the devil have you been, though?
Been
Yeah.
better, but I'm okay now. I'm okay now and back on track. Spirit have kicked my butt and said, time to get out there and get going again. So here we are. Miles, I can't think of a better reason to not be watching the service today. Helping Grandad on his allotment. That is absolutely wonderful. Fabulous. And hello to Claire, to Linda, to Carol, to everybody who's joining us this morning. It's a beautiful day, and I thought we'll just come on, say a quick prayer, and then have a chat and see what Spirit wants us to talk about, debate, discuss, and all things like that. So, would you like to open in prayer, dear, or should I just say the
I'm
prayer?
quite, I'm quite happy to open in prayer. You know, get me
Okay.
to earn me position on the screen today. Get to do some work.
Go on, then.
Let's join together, friends, as we welcome each other to this place, to this space. As we say, Great Spirit, Father, Mother, God, we thank you for the opportunity, truly and really, to come together as friends, to sit in a moment, to hear the words of Spirit reaching out to us, to give us guidance, strength, support, upliftment, and love. We know that all work in your name is as worthy and great, be that the kindness of a stranger, the words that make us someone down smile. But of course, we know that you will reach out and help us in all of those tasks. And as we lift the veil and ask for our friends and helpers to be here to help us in saying the right thing, we ask for the strength and the courage to be able to reflect that great light of love and compassion, and the words that will give help and support to all that need to hear it, that hear them today and in the future. And so as we place this meeting, this circle of friendship in your care and keeping, we make the statement as ever that everything we do will be in the name of love, truth, and light. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. Oh, Claire loves your badge, Nick.
Oh, thank you. I've had it since June. I realised actually that I'd never had a rainbow lapel pin, and I was really quite disappointed with myself. Let me just adjust so that it gets a better view. I was really quite disappointed in myself for not having it. So that was the first thing I did. I went and got one.
Fabulous. I love it. It is nice. It is nice. I know we were talking before we came on screen about some of the reasons why I wanted to do something today, particularly with the news that's out at the moment. I know we were doing the Spirit talk, Spirit line talks a little bit earlier in the month, but I was flicking through the BBC's news website, and it's about the Ukraine again, and those guys that have been held over Olivia Pratt Corbell's murder. She was caught in the crossfire and shot, and I just thought, with everything that's dark in the world at the moment, we need to shine our light again. So we need to shine our light out there, Nick, today, this morning. and
do.
give some upliftment to people. Oh, Lisa, we gave a reading a while ago saying I need to make big changes. I made a big change, Sean. I'll message you if okay. Absolutely fine, Lisa. You message away, dear. Message away. I'm intrigued now. But no, we do need to shine our light out there and just uplift people. And I know Michael's going to roll his eyes at me, but I just want to share a little snippet of a story about how sectionalized the world's becoming and how people become entrenched in their own little tribe of people and can't see outside. I went along for some blood tests and the monkeypox vaccine. And I went and had some blood tests, and the doctor took the bloods and said, "Oh, Dawn will be out in a minute, love, and she'll come and do your injections and stuff." I was like, "Okay, go sit in the room. She'll call you out." So I went and sat in the waiting room, and this lovely lady comes and shouts me in, and she says, "The monkeypox one, I've got to leave it for 15 minutes to come to room temperature. So you just sit there, dear, and I'll get on with my work and typing away." And engaged me in conversation. I was quite happy to sit there in silence, but she wanted to talk. So what do you do, love? I said, "Oh, I'm medically retired because of some medical issues." And oh, okay, what did you do? I work for DWP. Don't judge me. And just trying to lift the mood. And does that? So how do you fill all your time in now then? And I said, "Well, I run a charity called the Rainbow Project, and oh, I've heard of that." And we had a bit of a natter about that for a while. And she says, "So does that take all your time up then?" I said, "No, I'm actually a minister," and left it at that. "Oh, I'm a born again Christian." So we had a lovely chat about the grace of God and Jesus Christ as our Savior and all of this. And oh, so where do you minister? And I said, "Well, I go around the country doing services for people." And oh, okay. So you're like Methodist? No.
No,
Oh, um. So I thought, oh, I've got to say it. So I said, I'm a Christian spiritualist. Oh, lovely, spiritualist.
Yeah.
Um. Oh, oh, are they the ones that talk to the dead? No, we talk to the living spirit that's gone back to the divine energy. No, Bible said, and she started quoting scripture at me,
Yeah.
and I thought, I could pick that needle up at the minute, dear, and stick it somewhere where the sun don't shine, but never mind. Anyway, I thought, no, I won't say anything because you've got to stick that in my arm and I don't want it to hurt, so I'll just sit here. And I kept trying to like, we'll agree to disagree then. And, you know, we still believe in God and Jesus Christ, but we also believe that the divine energy connects with us all. So if the divine energy connects with us all, then those gone before who have gone back to the divine energy can also connect. No, no, you should leave them in peace. And the Bible says, and I said, the Bible's been translated so many times, love, you know, that the meaning, the core meaning is there, but the frippery around it is the interpretation and the political climate that was around at the time of that translation. No, no, it's the word of God. I was like, okay. 15 minutes was up then, so she stabbed my arm and I left. But I did think about making a complaint, and then I thought, look, no. I mean, if I'd been talking to her though in the Costa Coffee downstairs in the entrance to the, even if she had a uniform, that's fine. But when she's in that room, she's on duty, and her opinion should be left at the door. But I just thought how narrow those views that you can't embrace. We've talked before, Nick, and we've said everybody is welcome because no matter what your beliefs, you deserve ministry.
Yes.
And I just find it difficult that even within Christianity, they can be so indoctrinated that they can't see outside of that small bubble. I know we're bringing the energy down again, but you know, I'm just
no, because there's a reason for bringing the energy down. Because in order to bring the energy up, you need an example of the energy being down, and how to give people the resources, the ability, the strength, and courage of conviction to actually bring it back up themselves. Because your parable, which is exactly what it is, I'm sure Joshua Carpenter would be very proud. Your parable, which wasn't a parable, it was a real thing, but it can be used as a parable to and some people around me, I get this is so absolutely shine the light. Now there are going to be people that will try and enforce the bushel upon your light. And that is perfectly natural for people to want to be right. But when it comes to a professional situation, exactly agree with you. And Michael's going to be shocked to know that I completely agree with him. It really, really should be left at the door. In actual fact, it should be left outside the door, down the hall, and by the entrance. Frankly, now, it might have been a conversation, but you were the one doing what she should have done. She disagrees with your belief. She disagrees with your faith. She disagrees with your God, frankly. So in the position that she was holding, she should have basically, in common English, shut the hell up. However, sometimes in our life, we need to politely, spiritually, and kindly enforce that shutting the hell up, because it's inappropriate, and we need to be able to silence people in a polite way to end it, to draw a line under it. Now, the thing that I find so hilarious about scripture is that it gives the answer to spiritualists. It gives spiritualists the answer. I'm just going to smile and keep talking on that one. And it is very much about being entitled to their own opinion, and they are. Otherwise, what the point is free will? You know, however, when you are trying to enforce your opinion on someone else, especially in an extremely vulnerable setting, is unforgivable. So the first thing that we have to do, and this is one of the reasons why I'm a Christian spiritualist rather than a spiritualist, is because I learn and understand about that which is used against us. When spirits say about being a shield to your life, that's exactly what it is. Know what it is that's going to come at you, so you are prepared for it. Because if you are prepared to stand your ground and throw in a few real facts, people will naturally go silent, and it might even encourage them to think about what they're saying, but it will naturally end the subject. And I'm not talking about silencing people permanently. I'm talking about using knowledge to end a difficult situation, because regardless of what anybody thinks, says, or tries to paint it, you were being attacked for what you believe. Now, first and foremost, that's illegal. As far as the British statute of legislation is concerned, a legal prosecution case was taken about spiritualism, and because it was then defined as being a religious practice, under British law it is a religion, full stop. Whether you want it to be or not, it is legally a religion. That gives you protection, because under every single human rights law, matters of conscience are protected. So that's the first thing. So you are allowed to be who you want to be. That's brilliant. For once, the law actually protects us. But the second thing is knowing that you are going to have what we call these clobber passages come at you, and you have to have answers for them. And you went absolutely down the right path, but I would have probably been a little bit more brutal and gone a little bit further with the following thing. the core of it all stems from people saying whether scripture is the word or God of not. And no matter what you or I as a spiritualist say about how it's interpreted, about how it started in a mixture of Aramaic, Hebrew, and Greek, and has been translated then into Latin and then into English, and all of the meaning has been lost. The vast majority of all of the stories, especially the last one, in the New Testament, Revelations, was specifically written about political climate and written about the Romans, not about a future event coming off in the distance. The easiest one, frankly, is who compiled the Bible? Gene! No, Gene didn't compile the Bible. Hello, Gene. Oh, she's gone again. She'll be back. Who actually compiled the Bible? Now, contrary to popular belief, it wasn't one specific council meeting that decided which was right and which was wrong. But the vast majority of the work came from the Catholic Church, and the Catholic Church says that the Bible is not inerrant unless read in the mother tongue. Here she is again.
I'm so sorry. Quickly, I can't come on because I'm having my grandson for dinner. So I thought I'd just put on and say, hi, Nick. Hi, everybody. Take care, and I'll speak to you soon.
Bye, love.
Bye.
Depends.
So yeah, well, yeah. So yeah, the Catholic Church was the focus and the core of putting together most of the works, and some of them are considered apocryphal. I'll get to that in a second. Some of them are not. It was human beings who decided whether they were apocryphal or not. But the Catholic Church, the people who primarily and majoritively put together those texts and made them sacred, state the word of the Bible is not inerrant unless written in the mother tongue.
Yeah.
And therefore, what we read now is not the word of God by Catholic standards, by the original church's standards. Lisa, wasn't the Bible originally written in lost languages and weren't these? Not entirely lost language, although Aramaic is most lost. What it is, for example, if we were to go back in time, even in England, and visit William Shakespeare, he really wouldn't have a clue what we're talking about, because the syntax, the context, the speech patterns, the use of language has all changed over time, and it does in every language. But the problem you've got is that, especially Paul, he used to like to make up his own words. I'm afraid I'm a little bit like that myself. I'll just use fancy words that I've read in a thesaurus and merge them together, and we all do it. We make up our own words. Nowadays, they get put into the dictionary. Back then, they didn't, because there wasn't one. We've also got to look at the fact that all of the things that have, especially in the New Testament, everything that's depicted in the New Testament was handed down by oral tradition for at least 60 years until it became committed to text. That text was then copied by hand, and then pushed together and shared around. There was no instant where the Bible became the Bible. It was all, connected and passed around. It was like the ISA. We've got this piece of text that we're going to share with our friends, and we've got this piece of text that we're going to share with our friends, and they start to merge into a book, and then suddenly it became Holy Scripture. But so yeah, you are right in the sense that a lot of the language is lost, especially Aramaic is not that much used. The Greek still used, and Paul wrote in Greek, absolutely, like folklore stories, absolutely. But Paul in particular, and one that is particularly important to Rev Tony and myself, is, depending on how you pronounce it, arsenokoite, which I knew what you meant, Lisa. Spirit help. Arsenokoitai, which is hilarious in its pronunciation anyway. But Paul basically made it up out of other words. And it's what is known as a colloquialism. So, for instance, if we were to write down all of the phrases and words with "all right, governor," and you know, all of the words that are, for example, you know, when you go down the street and then you're listening to kids talk, you can hardly understand what they're saying half the time because they've got their own cultural determination of language, which is a natural progression in every generation. My parents looked at me when I was talking as a teenager. I don't know what you're on about. We all do it, but if you times that by 2,000 years, those words are lost because we don't always have the meanings and the context preserved. So with a word like Arsenokoitai, even great scholars can't always understand exactly what it means. Words existed and thought being into absolutely. And this is the thing I mentioned about the, and I'm sorry I'm going on, but this is something I'm very passionate about. You might have guessed, in particular, the apocrypha, the apocryphal texts, gospels that are considered non-canon, still have an importance and reflection on what was going on at the time. And all I will say is, believe it or not, read the Gospel of Judas, very spiritualistic. Mum never knows what I'm talking about, obviously. But the Gospel of Nicodemus, because the reason that was made apocryphal is because it completely agrees with spiritualism and goes against the control functions of modern Christianity. And if you can spout stuff like that, especially the one about, you know, the inerrancy of the Bible, if you can mention the apocrypha, yes, of course, they're not part of the canon. However, they were still used even today to understand and debate scripture. And especially the Gospel of Nicodemus really covers spiritualism. So when you can throw stuff like that at people that are throwing the clobber passages, mostly out of context, they will stop. They will think. They will run away. You have dealt with a situation in a polite and knowledgeable and friendly way, and you never know, you might even help somebody. But there you go. If anybody wants, I will share a link to the Gospel of Nicodemus, unless, because I will just briefly say it's about the harrowing of hell. It's what happened between Good Friday and Easter Monday, what Joshua Carpenter was doing in the world of spirit before coming back. So yes, I will definitely dig that out, because the harrowing of hell, basically in a nutshell. Oh, hang on. I agree. Thank you for getting it right. Thank you. Yeah, absolutely. It's those Chinese whispers every single time, and thank you for your kind words, Kerry. I've got one that I go to, but I don't always agree with it still. So could it be that people who heard and saw God's Spirit? Absolutely. In fact, I would remove the word could. It is. All of these people that have written on behalf of Spirit were mediums. Moses, Elijah, Yeshua, all of them. But unfortunately, just like a medium on the platform, sometimes you'll get a symbol come through and you'll interpret it wrong. My favourite is my tomato plants that I had when I was first starting out. I was given a message to a young lad whose mate came through, and I gave him tomato plants. No, absolutely not. Well, no, I'm seeing these plants and he's laughing about them. No, I don't get it. And I had to keep going back and getting, as we do as mediums, you go back and you check, you verify, you correct the information. And he said, tell him about the shape of the leaves, and he kept showing me the leaves. It's like, the shape of the leaves. So I described the shape of the leaves. It's cannabis.
Yeah.
I got it wrong because I didn't understand that particular concept. Or I certainly wasn't thinking about it at the time. Mother's watching after all. But the point is, I went back and verified, but these writers, they didn't go back and verify like we do now as mediums, that we've trained to do over time. So instead of giving the world cannabis, I gave them tomato plants, which was completely wrong. And that's exactly what happened.
It's your frame of reference.
Absolutely.
And it is something I've taught I said to the group that we're just coming to the end of. We've been doing this little development group, and I've said, you'll get up on platform, and the first time somebody says no to you, you'll want to crawl under the carpet. Don't, because 99 times out of 100, when you go back to spirit and say, gotta know, what do I do? It'll be that you have interpreted something in your frame of reference which isn't how that person sat in front of you understands it. So the first thing I do is I describe what I'm seeing, or I describe what I've heard. That might shed some light on. Otherwise, go back and just say, still not getting it, can you give me something? And they will. They want to get their message over, so they will.
Exactly. And the absolute point of it is that we do that, but those who they didn't.
Literally.
So you're getting, frankly, garbage in, garbage out, you know, because they're focusing on their own self rather than making it, as Adele says about symbols, because they're personal and personal meaning. They're writing for themselves, not the wider masses. This is why Yeshua was so very good at getting his message across, because he recognized that scripture was really, really pompous, hard to understand for the masses. So let's make it understandable. So rather than talking all fancy, he told about a bloke walking down a street.
Yeah.
You know, it's things that people can understand. And unfortunately, not so much in religion. Well, yes, so much in religion, but even more so now, the new religion of mass media does exactly the same. And this is why I'm going to be perfectly honest and really, really brutal. The world has always been crap. There's always been horrors, there's always been difficulties, there's always been pains, there's always been suffering. But now it's thrown in our face on a 24-hour cycle.
Yep.
You know, I learn a lot from things that I watch, and the news cycle is something very specific. And there was a time when the news cycle would end about 7 o'clock. That's a full lid. That's the end of the news cycle. That was something that they did in the White House when they first started having a press secretary. That's a full lid, guys, which meant that's the end of the day. I'm giving you nothing else. But now we're on a 24-hour news cycle. There's never a lid. There's never a break. There's never a breather. And everything that we are seeing is in so much more graphic detail. I mean, there was a time when they would blur out or not show footage of a dead body on the news. Now we see them all over the place. Yes, it's more true to what's happening, but there's no age limit on watching the Channel 4 News or the BBC News or the Sky News.
No.
Everyone can see this. And we are at a much earlier stage in our lives being thrust into the harshness and horror of the real world that has always been there. You know, for example, there are things that happen to each and every one of us that never make it to the news, never will make it to the news. I had some bad news on Thursday myself. a very, very dear friend of mine who I used to work with passed away. And she was on holiday in Spain, and she was involved in a really, really bad accident.
Oh, bless her.
And her grandson is still very, very poorly as well. And I'm not going to go into the details of it, but there were certain details that influenced my train of thought for the next 24 hours. For example, there are things that I would say in a service on a Thursday that reflect what happened to her. I cut them out. But you know full well that if it had been on a 24-hour news cycle on the press, then the whole detail would have been there. There would have been pictures, there would have been eyewitness accounts saying exactly what they want to say in full gory detail. Yeah, and that is the thing. So what I'm saying is, the rubbish has always been there, the pain has always been there, the horror has always been there, but it's much more prevalent. And in so many ways, that's a good thing, but it means that we have to be more guarded against it and realize that people make a difference, just as with 24-hour news cycle, as with old scripture being edited and tweaked. It is people that make the difference.
Yeah. And it goes back to what you said earlier about you have to have your spiritual shield up
every time, but also your emotional one. And you know, for those that are not practicing mediums, well, how do I put my spiritual shield up? It's also an emotional shield, and it's a mantra that you have to repeat every single moment. That all of this horror that we are seeing that affects us daily has always been there, and yet we are still here.
Yeah.
You know, the world has been on the brink of annihilation more times than we know, and it survives. The world has been at the edge of pain and destruction every minute of every day for at least one soul, but we are still here because kindness, love, compassion, understanding, sympathy, generosity, humor all make a big difference and create your emotional shield. And it certainly helps our spiritual shield when we're working.
Oh yeah.
So that compassion and that love, that going out and making a stranger smile, making a joke that will make someone laugh, it does make a difference because our thoughts make up the universe. So, you know, I always go back in situations like this, as weird as it sounds, to the gospel according to Adina Monsoon. And there you go. Instantly, you've brought yourself back up because you know what's coming. It might be horrible out there, but it's not all bad. So get over it. And get over it is about hurdles. Getting over it can sound very harsh, but you have to get over your hurdles.
Yeah.
So getting over it is literally getting over each and every hurdle. And yes, Lisa, we all have our own unique and individual lessons. We all have ones that we have to share. And we need to be filling the world with joy every single moment of the day. Lou jokes that. Yeah. We've all had them. We've all had them.
Oh,
They win. They win every time. And do you know what? I don't mind. So long as the language is slightly edited for content and is what shall we call subtle, I'm happy for it to be on any platform that I share because humour means everything. Love and compassion means everything.
It's that going back to the class I've just been teaching. I teach, as Jean taught me, you have key points when you're giving a message. You have to prove your link, prove who you're working with, give your message and get out.
Yeah.
But leave on a positive. And if you're faffing about with a guy who's bombarding you with lewd jokes and you're trying to put him over in the sheep dipped way of giving messages that we all know and love.
Yeah.
Like if you brought Michael's father to me and said, you know, only saying this, and I'd be like, doesn't sound like him.
Yeah. Yeah.
But if you started with the jokes and I'd be like, oh yeah, got it, know who that is, without a
Yeah,
doubt.
absolutely. Absolutely.
The essence of the person, and that's not to say you can talk about whatever they're talking about, but you can give their essence across in a
polite way.
Yeah.
Managed. You can say even polite's wrong. Managed way.
And can I say it? The lady energies that come back are the worst ones for me. I call them my feisty ladies because they come in and it's like boom, 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 and I love it. I love it. And you talk about their colourful personality and that they were always direct with their speech and they wouldn't be afraid to drop the F-bomb here and there.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You know, you've got to keep it real. To keep it real. What is the point? And we say, I mean, the whole point, we say to people, you know, spirit don't change. You know, they're still the same person. Otherwise, how would you recognize them? You've got to give these quirks and these naughtinesses as part of the demonstration. For example, you know, excuse me, I might hear a dirty joke, and I would explain, I'm having a dirty joke told to me that I'm not going to repeat because I'd get booted off the platform. But certainly it wasn't clean. And he's talking about certain instruments that you have around your house, you know, and you can push it to the limit without getting yourself in trouble, but still being true. So long as you say when you're editing, people will know what you're editing.
Yeah, exactly. I got a lady's brother come through, and I mean, you could see from the lady as she was presenting herself in the congregation, she was out there and she was, you know, a colourful personality herself, as was the brother that was coming through. And he talked about her piercings because she had rings in her nose and her ears and things, and a couple of snake bite ones here. And I said, I'm getting your piercings, but I'm going lower. And she's like, oh my God, yes, I've had those done since he went to spirit. And then I said, oh, he's showing me a triangle, and that's all I'm going to say. He showed me a triangle.
Yeah.
And she just went, oh my God. And crawled under a stone. You know, was like, seen. I was like, he must have, otherwise he couldn't show me. Anyway, yes, she did have nipple piercings, and occasionally she went and joined them up with a chain, which formed a triangle.
Yes.
And it was like, oh my word. And she's like, if you hadn't said that, I wouldn't have known who it was. But that exactly. Was the personality. He'd have done that if I'd gone to a Catholic church.
Yeah.
And he was here, he'd have gone like, oh, have you got your chains on today, love? You know?
Yeah. I think the worst / funniest I ever had, and I don't quite know how you're going to respond to this, especially how I dealt with it, but I had a lady come through to me who occasionally appeared slightly more masculine than the lady she was portraying herself to be. And the recipient couldn't understand it. Well, the communicator then picked something up and started waving it in the air. And it was, shall we say, a personal appendage. And I'm like, he's waving something in front of me. So she's waving something in front of me. And I could see exactly what it was, but I was trying to think of a way to put it. And I said, it's very reminiscent of a personal toy. And I had to give it because it was important. And I tried, but then she turned round to me and said that the communicator did. It's not a toy. It made it here about 20 years before I did.
Okay.
And then the message was instantly accepted.
Yeah.
Because it was that information that mattered.
Yeah. And you have to be true to spirit in that sense. And when you try and shackle spirit down to the politeness,
yeah,
you lose something. You lose something. And as long as you're not effing and jeffing and using colloquialisms, I have no issue with anybody serving a church where I am and being as frank as you can be in given the people in front of you.
Yeah, absolutely. You've got to be, otherwise what's the point?
And that's the other thing that I will teach people is to read the room. Understand the people that are in front. I don't read the room cold. I mean, read the room as in gauge where you are and gauge the level you can work on. Because I've been in some where it's like we've said, no, say what's coming through. We don't mind a little bit of oh bloody hell or whatever, you know. As long as it's not out there, then give what you're getting. Like your tomato plants, they wouldn't have had an issue with you saying, "Oh, it's weed," you know.
And you definitely and you're absolutely right. And Lisa, yes, I totally agree. Much of what we do and where we fail as mediums is not about communicating with spirit. It's about communicating with the living.
Yeah,
I personally believe, and in actual fact, in the up and coming program of workshops that I've got, there's a special section that should be done about communicating with people, the living spirit right in front of you, because that is where the problem lies. And I'm not saying that people are a problem. I'm saying it's that ability to communicate. And the first stage is read the room, look at the people. If you're getting scowls, back off. If you're getting grins, keep going. Because you have got to learn to communicate with people before you can give a message from the platform. It's a little bit different in a private reading. You can be a little, a lot more informal. It's easier to tell and gauge the level you can get with one person. But it's like when it comes to leadership, and it's like leading the conversation. So it's a similar principle. When it comes to leadership, there are three different views. You lead from the front. You lead from the back so that you can keep an eye on your lowest common denominator, or you lead from the middle so you've got your hand on everyone. And when it comes to communicating with the living, you have to lead you have to be right in the thick of it. You have to be able to feel the emotion and the tolerance level of the room. And you have to be in easy reach of those that are going away too far for you and those that are getting behind you so you can keep hold of them. And it's really, really important. Reading the room, I agree with you completely. And that's why part of my development program that I do is all about communicating with the living, which kind of ties everything to do with biblical scripture and dealing with people who will throw clobber passages right down to making people smile. Read the room and know your audience.
Yeah, the worst one for me is when I've been sat in a congregation and the medium's been up there and they might be the most wonderful medium ever, and I have seen some of the mediums I'm talking about work and been absolutely phenomenal and on fire, but about 10 minutes into the service, you can see the people in the congregation going, and you think, oh gosh, because they've lost the room. They've lost it. And once you've done that, it's very hard to pull back. So you try and be very aware of all of the people and watching their body language. And as soon as you see that shift, try and bring it back somehow. Another quick about tying things up in a bow. I was at a lovely church, Nick, and if ever you get up here, you should try and get to that church. It's lovely. Just a small little place. It's called Jamroz in Bridlington. And I was sat with Gillian, and she was going through the order of service with me. I've been there dozens of times, so why she keeps going through the... And they do the traditional, you do the opening prayer, hymn, philosophy, reading, then philosophy, then another hymn, then mediumship. And I said, oh, I like how Nick does it down in Littleport. He does them the other way around. He does the philosophy first because the reading's chosen in advance, and then does the reading and see if spirit can tie it up in a little bow. Oh, she says, so she shouted over to the lady who does the readings and said, hang on, you're going after Tony's philosophy tonight. And poor Sally looked really confused, like, what? She's, yeah. It's an experiment, go with it. So I did my philosophy about, I've done it before, but spirit every now and again bring these things back in a slightly different way because somebody in that room needs to hear it. And it was all about biological and logical family. I talked about that, and then Sally got up and gave her a reading about the power of friendship. And then the next hymn was You Raise Me Up.
It really is.
And Gillian was sat and she just sort of went,
fabulous.
Oh my God, I would never have noticed that. So that's how they do it now.
Oh, wonderful. Oh, bless them. Oh, wonderful. It's using every aspect of a service to prove mediumship, giving philosophy, picking the reading is mediumship because spirit have the input into it. And, you know, we've had some right corkers, but one of the most memorable actually was last week. Because not only was it a stonking comparison, I mean, normally, I will be honest, when I get grumpy and want to say something and spirit aren't entirely in agreement with me, it doesn't work because I've influenced it, which again ties back to what we were saying. But they gave me permission to have a rant because it was really important spiritually to help someone with the situation they were in. So they gave me permission, rant away, they said. The reading that Alan picked was absolutely on the button, on the nail, connected. What makes it even more so is Sam, who obviously runs Bully Special Prize Corner with Hannah, she always picks a reading before the service, just in case we lose connection or Alan's not available. You know, it helps her to see if it ties in with what she's done as well. She picked the same reading as Alan.
No way.
Yeah.
So they were determined then?
She picked the exact reading that Alan had picked. It laid on her phone. Her screen was open before he started speaking, just in case the Wi-Fi went. So I could see that it hadn't been changed. And she went at the end, I picked a reading as well. And for a minute you're in that moment. And you're like, oh, we'll have a look at that in a moment. And she went, no, it's the same reading. And I went, you know, and you can actually see, and I even brought it to this. I couldn't show it on the screen very well because the light was reflecting back, but it just shows how spirit are really, really good at getting the message across if we allow them to.
Yeah.
Mother.
Yeah.
She had a dream this morning that gave her some really, really good information that just tied in with that, so I had to throw that one in. But if we allow spirit to have that influence, have that openness.
That's the thing. That's the key, the openness, because the hardest lesson I had to learn when Jean took me under her wing was to trust spirit. Because I've always said, if you're an actor, you learn your lines, you learn your cues, you learn your stage directions. If you're a singer or a musician, you know your score, you know your set list, you know your dance moves, you know where everything is. You've got your little inner ear things giving you all your cues. We get up on a rostrum, nothing.
Yeah.
Nada. The only thing I know when I get up on a rostrum is I've got butterflies in my stomach, which means I've got my connection with my guides. The first time I come into a church and I don't have that knotted stomach, I'll think I'm giving up because they're not there.
Yeah,
but
absolutely.
Trust spirit, and then the first thing in your mind is spirit. The second thought is your interpretation thereof. So get it, give it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Any mediums out there or any developing mediums, that's the one bit of advice I would give you. Trust spirit, get it and give it. Because
absolutely.
And don't be afraid of no's.
Because no's make us work. No's are actually more evidential. At the end of the day, if I didn't get a no, I'd be worried, because it means that I'm so polished, you know, that I'd start getting a bit of an ego. But the other thing is, for the perception of the congregation, if there is no no's and we don't go back and check that information and verify that information, we could easily be just reading it from Facebook.
Yeah. And
you know, and with the little earpiece and someone in the back room.
Oh, French and Saunders sketch about a certain medium that was doing with Sam, and it goes to the van outside, and Sam's like, hang on, I'm getting the encyclopedia out.
Yeah, and this is it. And that is always the risk. So I think no's are brilliant, because no's make you work as a medium. It shows that we are human and vulnerable, but it shows that we have to work for it. And when that final understanding of why we said what we said versus the information that's been corrected and what it actually means, it actually demonstrates the process that we follow as mediums.
Yeah. That's why
I'd like to answer Michael's question in a minute as well.
Right. I was just going to say that the thing for me is, that's why I always say, hang on a minute. What I've got is, and I describe either the thought that came into my head or the image I've seen. So that's what I'm seeing. Let me check.
Yeah.
So that they can't then say, oh, you just changed that to make it fit.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Anyway, Michael's question.
And before we go on to Michael, actually, I just want to back up that, because I totally agree with you to the extent that there's one thing that really annoys me, that people don't read the room and don't read the recipient and don't listen to their recipient, actually, because there are times like that. I've seen mediums that will explain what they've seen, and the recipient have said, oh, yes, it's okay, I understand that. And then we'll go off and interpret it anyway and get it completely wrong, because it's not for us to know, it's not for us to understand. So sometimes give it, get it, shut up, as you were
exactly.
But there are so many mediums
as soon as they say, oh, right, yes, like if somebody said to me, laburnum tree, I'm seeing a laburnum tree. Oh, yeah, okay, I get that. But it's not for that medium to know why I understand a laburnum tree.
Absolutely.
It's none of my business. It's none of my business. And that's the other thing I'll always say is, a message is between that person in spirit and that person in front of you. It's nothing to do with, I always say, well, Michael always says, we're a squawk box. We are a Bluetooth speaker. We receive that signal and we blurt it out.
Feed it out,
That's it. Nothing.
And the least we interfere with it, the better.
Exactly.
So, absolutely brilliant. Now, Michael's question is very, very interesting, because in one sense, you could say, because of human perception and understanding, there's about 8 billion people on this earth now, so about 8 billion times. However, not everyone's going to be right. And everyone's going to take different meaning from it. So it's a really, really open-ended question with a really, really open-ended answer. So therefore, I give you a reply, not an answer, a response, not a definitive answer to it. It's very much. It's very much. If you are dealing in a binary world, Michael, then you've got a 50-50 chance of it being changed. However, as this world is certainly not binary in any way, shape, or form, it's an open-ended question with an open-ended answer, and I will say that it depends on the person. Yeah. And that actually, the reason that I wanted to say that is because it ties in with everything we've just said about mediumship.
Exactly. And something I sometimes add on to the end of a service, if I'm doing a physical service, is, and if you didn't get a message from the medium tonight or from me tonight, but something that was said resonated with that very core of you, take it, because spirit tend to piggyback and get bits through.
Oh, God, yeah.
So if you resonate with something from a service, take it, because it was meant for you as much as it was for the person who was going, yeah, I can take that.
Completely. And that's why I love philosophy, because that is the everyone message. That is the everyone message. Which is why I always try and keep it positive, but sometimes I just have to be an arse and be brutal and state my case.
Could I add my 2 pence to Nick's comment, which I totally agree with?
Go on. But if you're going to, come and sit here and do it.
Which is,
let's say, we need to see you.
If we take the concept of a message being a story, which physically it is, it's meant to relay something, then the idea of storytelling is to create an effect. That is all you are actually wanting to do. You want to create an effect on a reader or on a recipient. Now, how you do that, as you say, is open-ended. The actual effect you want to create to a point isn't, because you have got a solid message that you want to convey. It's just how you convey it that changes. The story itself is the same message.
Absolutely.
It's just an appropriate way of giving that message.
Absolutely. And as we know, using the same analogy, one of the things, and it's certainly about the communicating with people, is that if you get your first sentence right, you've got people's attention.
Yeah.
If you go on about something that's completely irrelevant and doesn't really matter, people are going to lose interest straight away. You've already lost, and the rest of the book remains closed to. It's all about getting an engagement, getting a bit of intrigue, a little bit of interest, but also something that's going to get a payoff further down the line.
People remember 2 things.
Fortunately for mediumship, that part of it is naturally there, because the payoff further down the line is proof of survival. We've got that, but we still have to make it engaging. We still have to make it understandable. We still have to make it, in the words of Lisa, basic human nature.
Yeah. If I was teaching people how to do this to a point, one of the exercises I would use is take a very, very simple, well-known story. Take something like a nursery rhyme. Find multiple ways to tell exactly the same thing to different audiences without changing the meaning one iota. But tell it appropriate for children, tell it appropriate for adults. Find different ways to look at it, but without changing the basic essence behind it, so that everybody would be able to recognize it immediately as what it is.
Absolutely. And that's the point of the human polish that we have to do as mediums. I'll never forget, it's not always the visual stuff that intrigues people. I'm sorry, it's not always the oral stuff that intrigues people, it's the visual as well. If you can show something visual, and you've done it yourself, Tony, and I know occasionally they get me doing it, there are things that I give as part of my message that aren't audible.
No.
The behaviors, the positions that I sit, the expressions that I pull, the postures. And this is the thing. It's all about that difference between when they used to talk about a program, either for radio or television. If you can understand it all with words and everything that's being said, it might as well be on the radio. In order for it to be worthy and part of a television show, there has to be visual cues, there has to be something that you have to observe to understand it, that adds to it. So if you can just sit there and done, it might as well be radio. Whoops-a-daisy. There you go, visual cues. The spirit, wonderful, because at the end of the day, unless you saw that, you wouldn't know what just happened.
No.
And this is the thing. Spirit use every single concept in existence to get their message across. The radio, books, the telephone, the lights flickering, the car driving past, the letters on a number plate, you know, the physical posture of the medium, the mouth and the voice, the behaviors, the attitude, everything is a worthy victim for spirit use to get the message across.
Needed to be in.
Absolutely. Old family in there, you see. So yeah, I think it's really it is really important that we make use of everything. And the one that I see least used, again, humour. It's got, I mean, there was a couple of years ago, somebody shared, it's Arthur Wright literally sent me a news cutting. Unique minister tells jokes from platform. And it was about this Church of England minister who used a sense of humour and told jokes and sung songs as part of their sermon. And at the bottom of it, in pen, scribbled in permanent marker by Arthur, was, but then you've been doing this for years. And it was so heartwarming, but it's so rare that whenever anyone sees it, oh, you're very unique. No, I'm just human.
Yeah,
it is human.
Myself like to work with that humour and that positive upliftment and positive energies, because it engages people, it brings them in, and it makes it feel a little bit more intimate. Because it relaxes people. It relaxes.
And makes us seem normal. This is the hint that I gave Mother earlier when I gave her the scowl and said, "Let spirit have their way." She did a really, really good job last night, by the way. And I've got her listening to binaural audio to get her off to sleep and help her. And she did really, really well. And what clinched it for me is that there are certain habits that mediums have that instantly come naturally when you start getting it. I know I sound like a medium, but I could feel. And feeling. This is why I'll be honest, I get a little bit grumpy when say, "Oh, you're a clairvoyant."
No.
I can be, but there are at least four spirit senses that we can make use of: clairvoyance, clairaudience, clairsentience, claircognizance, to name but the four main ones. And I'd be a fool to limit myself to just visual, just audible, just feeling, or just knowing. You can't limit yourself. Make use of, to some extent, all four, which is exactly what we were just saying a few minutes ago about making use of every tool in the box.
Yeah.
So thank you for bringing that one forward, Michael. You know, so I get a bit grumpy when people call me a clairaudient or a clairvoyant because there's so much more to it than that.
Yeah.
So much more to that. And you don't have to be a brilliant clairvoyant and a brilliant clairaudient if you're really clairsentient, but make use of them, because spirit will swap it and change it around. How many times have we stood on a platform and said, normally I work like this, but for some reason I've got to?
Yeah.
Because they like to keep us on our toes. So no matter how you get used to, and this is the thing, it's the getting used to things for me.
Yeah.
When you get used to something, they swap it up to catch you out.
Yeah. It's you said earlier about if you get too many yeses, you'll feel a bit polished. It's, for me, once you start feeling that little sense of polish, they go, oh no, not having that.
It's that thing about tools, that you use the most appropriate tool for the job at hand.
Yes.
And most jobs do not rely on one tool.
Completely.
Yeah.
Completely. You wouldn't use a screwdriver to make a hole in the wall.
No.
Even though you can now use a drill to screw the screw in.
Yeah. Exactly.
So long as you've got the right bit that you had to.
Yeah.
And you wouldn't use a hammer on a nail, and you wouldn't use a screwdriver sorry, you wouldn't use a hammer on a screw, and you wouldn't use a screwdriver on a nail.
No.
Well, a drill's a really good example, because a drill relies on multiple tools.
Exactly.
Itself is a tool, but you are always going to use another tool to make it work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't do the complete job, but
it needs a bit.
It is. Do you get visual, sound, or sensory spirit? All of them, Daniel.
All of the above. All of the above.
Yeah. It can be just that. Like, I think last time I was down in Littleport, actually, I gave a message, and all I did was open my mouth and stuff came out.
Yeah.
I wasn't getting anything.
Which is the claircognizance, the clear knowing.
Yeah.
Which is the little known one, actually, but it's really fun.
It is, because you just open your mouth and this stuff tumbles out, and you think, you know,
what the, you know. And this is, and I don't know if you felt this, but for me, it makes it all the more of a, I have no idea what I just said.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, when people come and ask you afterwards, it's like, did I say that?
Yeah.
Huh? Really? Why did I say that? You know, it's so funny, really. So you've got the visual, the clairvoyance, you've got the audible, the sound of the clairaudience, you've got the feeling with the clairsentience. But I love claircognizance, because that cognitive knowing, sometimes it can be a bit of a cheat, because you don't feel like you're actually working.
No.
But what it does do is demonstrate to you cold-heartedly that you have got nothing to do with that process other than being the transmitter of that information.
That Bluetooth.
And it's very humbling, actually, and I think it's important. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Remember that there is one spirit that can make you have dreams that will especially make you feeling tired and drained, and that's your own living spirit, your own soul trying to give you a message. When spirit upstairs, the discarnate spirit, are trying to get you a message, you don't usually feel as tired and drained, because they go a lot easier on you than you go on yourself. If that makes sense. But certainly spirit will use dreams, like they did with Mum last night, and give her that specific information that she needed to remember. But yeah, I would say the tired and drained, that would be, to an extent, your own group and yourself, because spirit will, especially if you protect yourself, spirit will give you the energy you need to get through. Thank you. Now I know where it's going.
Yeah.
One of the things that I learned is if you don't ask for that energy back, they will either OD you or undersupply you. But if you ask for help and support and strength and the energies that you use back, they will be much more, or are able, because you have invited them in, to be much more specific with that measurement. If you don't ask for it, they'll think, oh, well, you don't need it, I'll give you a bit. Or if you don't ask for it, you think, oh, well, they forgot to ask, I better give them, because they're forgetting themselves. Here you go, have loads of those loads. You end up OD'd on spirit energy, which can be fun.
Bouncing off the wall. Yeah.
You're bouncing off the walls and everything. So it's always important before you go to sleep, before you do any work, to specifically ask, could all of the energies that I use in doing this work for you be replaced, please? You will never, ever again have to say, give me your energies, I need it. Because that's a very, and there's nothing wrong with it, but it's still a very psychic level, and you don't need the room. Gordon Higginson would sit with his hands tied underneath his bum, with his eyes blindfolded, his ears padded, back to the door. All that was available was his mouth, and they would then usher in a recipient, and he would give that information purely based on the fact that he had a tap on the shoulder to say, your recipient's here. He couldn't see anything, he couldn't hear anything, he certainly couldn't read the room. He gave the information that was purely from spirit. So we don't need the congregation to feed us energy. We need them there to help us balance out the communication of communicating with human beings, but we don't energetically or physically need them. No. All we need is you, me, and a spirit person. The recipient, the medium, and the spirit.
Which is why online stuff like this works, because it is
we're getting no visual cues from our congregation or those that are watching. We'll get comments now and again.
It's the core of what Lee's actually asking there. Really, really basic question, which is, spiritualism relies on the concept of when this disappears and this returns back to the earth, what's inside there is converted back into its original state, which is energy. Your brain relies on a very, very similar conversion of natural resources into energy. All you've got is two things being able to communicate much easier. So when you take sort of the thought process that you've naturally got during waking hours out of that equation, you've got a resting energy, which must be a lot easier to communicate with.
Yeah,
absolutely.
It just strengthens the communication.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
Absolutely, but the point of that is, if it's you, you will use up your energy. If it's spirit, you won't so much feel tired and drained, because you are your hardest taskmaster. And when it comes to a question, when there's 3 question marks, you know someone's frustrated by how tired they're feeling. And it's important to recognize that you need to, and this is the thing, especially with what Michael said, the energy transfer is a perfect analogy, because the only way to cancel out energy is with other energy. And therefore the energy that you need to cancel out is whatever is making you that way in your waking life, reflecting into your sleeping life. So you have to work, and what you can do is work with your guides and helpers, and to an extent yourself, and find that energy that is going to cancel out the negative one that's being fed through those dreams, which is basically a fancy way of saying whatever it is that they're showing with you, deal with it and it will disappear. Not disappear. Well, I stand corrected, because Gordon just said Michael's sitting there, so I have to say it will not disappear. It will be converted into another form.
Yeah.
Because I like Michael's sciencey mind.
It does, yeah. It brings it. Daniel, from personal experience, I would say yes, there is. But what I would say is find yourself a group and go and work with them, and they will help you to open up to spirit and to show you the right way to do it. Which I would say to anybody, if you want to learn to open to spirit, having dreams and things is one thing, but when they start coming to you in waking hours and things, or if you want to be able to do it in waking hours, go find somewhere to work and help. Somebody will help you to develop and teach you the right ways of doing it, so that, because if they see that tiniest little chink, they're in. And you need to be able to say to private time, downtime, and away we go.
Absolutely. And another thing I'd add to that is, there is this belief that medication can block spirit. They can't. What they do is, oh, thank you, visual aid. Right. So, spirit. This is your communication center, and this is spirit impressing stuff upon it. What medication does? Oh, hang on. Excuse the plugging out of the earphones. Let me pop them back in. Right. Can you hear me still? I haven't unplugged myself.
I can. Yes, I can.
Visual aid. So what medication does is it doesn't block communication, or especially when you're a natural medium, you've got all of that stuff coming through and developing. So you've got all of this historical way of communicating in your mind. What medication does is wipes it all out. It doesn't block it, it just cleans the slate. What you've got to remember about a clean slate is that you can start putting stuff on it again. And so therefore, the importance of remembering is that medication doesn't block you, it just wipes the slate clean. And therefore, you, to an extent, you have to find a different way of working or start again. But as Tony said, find a group to work with that will help you, because it's a lot quicker when you're doing it with people. Myself and my wife have been told while on a live with a friend we've got evil spirit in our house and supposedly causing us to have severe headaches because he finds it funny.
Do you want to take this one, Nick? Because I don't know how polite I could be.
Are you sure you want me to take this one? Because I don't know that I will. Right, okay. I'm taking it anyway.
Here we go.
Right.
Here we go.
When someone tells you that you have got an evil spirit with you, I have been working with rescue work and communicating with grumpy spirits in people's houses for about 24 years now, so about a quarter of a century. So I think I can say with a little bit of authority that 99% of grumpy spirits are just grumpy spirits. Evil spirits would certainly make themselves more known than through someone unalive. You would know if that spirit is evil or not. Chances are it is someone who wants to get through, who feels ignored, and
I'm not surprised.
Right, that says it all. So frankly, if you feel that it's evil, that's one thing. If you do not, you know the difference between right and wrongly. You know the difference between good and bad. You do not need someone to tell you that there is evil in your house, because you would know it. Because chances are you'd be clawing at the door and get your ass out. And anyone who wants to keep quoting negative entities and evil energies is not working with the light, and they are not working with human beings, because we all know that 9 times out of 10, a banging, rapping spirit is just someone wanting to get your attention who isn't there to suck your soul and carry your ass down to hell. Because if you read the Gospel of Nicodemus, you will find that the gates are closed, the locks are bust, and it's empty. Sorry, thank you for that one. And it really, really frustrates me, because this whole showmanship of wanting to create something really dramatic and excitable and, you know, really, you know, oh, evil spirits, blah blah blah, you know, it's as my wonderful student Hannah would put, BS. There, I can easily destroy negativity with positivity. Evil spirits are not as commonplace and real as people make them out to be. Because if we were to go back to, for example, the person that was talking to Tony whilst he was getting stabbed in the arm, he is surrounded by evil spirits. Because the only way to communicate is with the devil. Well, the devil is in the detail, and the detail is there's no such thing as evil on a grand scale. It's the individual. Going back to what we were talking about, interpretation of a message and how many times. Evil is not the big and almighty thing that people make it out to be. There is just grumpiness, and it's somebody, Lee, who just wants to say hello and is feeling ignored, either because that's part of their way of identifying themselves, the fact that they may have been deaf in their life or was a struggle to communicate. But chances are the headaches are just stress and frustration that you are feeling by this frustration. And I am sick to death of people trying to abuse spiritualism and abuse mediumship, quite rightly, Yanni, who are gobbing off about attachment this and evil spirit that. They are buying into the 24-hour news cycle of the world is poo. Yes, the world's poo, but we can change it. We can make it better. We can make a difference. And the more we keep telling people that they are surrounded by evil, the more we keep telling them that they have got attachments, we are becoming responsible for driving people flaming loopy. And I am sick of it.
I am.
Here, end of the sermon.
What I always say is, you are surrounded by your guides, inspirers, your loved ones, your family, your friends who have gone before. If you had a house full of guests at a party at your house who were your family, friends, and your loved ones, and some arsehole came through the door and started gobbing off at you and doing all sorts, your family would go, that's the door. Get the F out of it now. They would do the same thing from spirit. They would go, no, you're not going. You're not getting to them because we love them and we are going to stand between you and them. They would. If they're moving your stuff, Lee, the best thing to do is, what would you do with somebody in your house who was moving your cupboards about? You go, can you put that back, please? Communicate with them. Say,
right,
I want my keys back, please. Or, you know.
Universal law number 1. This isn't one of Nick's rules or Nick's laws that are up to about 743. This is to the extent I keep reusing the numbers. I got in trouble for that last Monday. No, Lee, don't apologise for hitting a sore nerve, because I needed to get this off my blooming chest. And God's universal law number 1, nothing can be in your space without your permission. Nothing can happen spiritually in your space without your permission. But there is one really horrible and awkward caveat. You have to know that rule to be able to enforce it. Which it gives me so thank you for giving me the opportunity to get this message out that will completely under whatever it is, because I'm getting annoyed now, pull the feet out from underneath all of this rubbish about negative evil entities taking over the world. just say no. Enough. And know that that is the universal law number one that cannot be undermined in any way, so long as you know it. And it's crappy, really, that you have to know it, but it's kind of like having a gate. You know, the only way to make a gate useful is to close the damn thing. You know, and it's the same thing. So take control of the situation and say, thank you very much for letting me know you're there, but will you put my blooming remote control, will you put my keys, and will you put my wallet back where you found them right now? It's the law. Do it. Yeah. And you know, I wish we could really get that message out to everyone. And I know we were trying to bring people up today, and I've kind of got on my soapbox and a bit grumpy.
No,
but it's important. It's important. And I really cannot emphasize enough how important it is. If it feels like bullshit, it is bullshit.
Yeah. Just want to pick up on this one, Yanis.
Yes.
There's only one person can answer that question, darling, and that's you. I'm afraid.
No, that's not a question. Sorry.
Oh no, there's no question.
Read the one before. I do get fed up with people talking about attachment and negative energy.
Oh, okay.
That is why I've lost my passion for working with spirit. But you're among friends, Yanis. Yeah, you're among friends who agree with you.
I mean, Jean's been working with energy and houses, like you say, and 9 times out of 10 it's a rescue mission. It's somebody who's stuck and can't find their way home, and she says there's only once she's ever been scared, and she'd gone into a house that said things are happening and couldn't explain it. We're a bit worried about going into a certain area of the house, so Jean and our friend went, and as Jean walked into a room, our friend was looking at something in the hallway, and the door slammed behind Jean and she couldn't get it back open. Friend couldn't open it from the outside, and Jean got a bit panicky. And when they sat down and got the connection, it was a grumpy old man who was in the house, and he was peed off because they changed the wallpaper and they changed this, they changed that, so he was stomping around and he was having his little tantrum. And they just sat down with the family and said, you need to tell him you don't want him in your space anymore. This is now your property. He's gone. He needs to go and find his wife and his kids who've gone before. And they got the family. Well, that's the time she said she's been worried. It was like this door slammed, and she was like, good Lord, I can't get out. But it was grumpy old man. It wasn't some demon with red eyes and fangs and a snake's tongue. It, some old man who was having a hissy fit because he didn't like the wallpaper they put up.
Yeah. And I have to admit, the last one I did, I stood there and did my usual speech in a hallway of, when you know that it's always positive and it's never going to be like a horror movie. It always ends up being positive. And I very much doubt that while I'm here, any lights will start flickering. And as I said that, the bathroom lights started going on and off. And I just... Okay. And I went through to the bathroom, and this little old bloke stood there with his finger more or less in there, pretending to turn it on and off, and went, that shut you up, didn't it? But it was so fun.
I love it. But I love it.
Lee's comment.
I just wanted to put this one up. We've gone half an hour over where I thought we would be, but I'm not bothered. It's fine, but I just thought that was a way of summing up what we do as an independent spiritualist alliance.
Absolutely.
We use mediumship for all things, and the Bible, it's an important book, but don't take it at face value. Take the essence of it And like, to quote the twins who have just been outside, that's why the dog was barking. David's just been over. I can't remember which of them said it, but it's like, how many different ways do you need in one book to say, don't be an arse to each other?
Yeah, yeah. Which goes back to Michael's question, actually.
Yeah.
I would like to answer this with a passage.
Go on.
Actually, well, not so much a passage, more of a long-winded story that I'll boil down into a few sentences. The story of Saul, King Saul, is used as a clobber passage against mediumship, right? God did away with mediumship; it was made illegal, and so therefore that's why we shouldn't use mediumship. And they quite often quote the story of Saul. But if you read the whole story as a whole story, you will hear about the fact that Saul had lost favour and grace with God, that God was peed off with him, he wanted him out. And so Saul wanted some support and help. So he wanted to go to see a medium. And unfortunately, in order to stop people finding out that God hated him, he made mediumship illegal. It was Saul that made mediumship illegal, not God. So I will keep it as normal as a story as I can for you, Yanni. But the point is, the story of Saul tells about a bloke who was a king, wanted people to not know that God didn't want him anymore, so he did away with mediumship, and then needed help from a medium, so he had to go and find one. Now, the interesting thing about this one, and this is why I explain things about the Bible, is that quite often, especially in the King James, you'll see that he went to the witch of Endor. The original translation just as woman, not blooming witch. But so anyway, he went to see the woman of Endor and got his message. But people still use that story to bash mediumship. But it wasn't God's law that did away with mediumship. It was Saul trying to hide up the fact that he was an arse and wasn't liked and in favour and needed to be replaced by someone nicer. Yeah. And so, you know, there are ways of getting that information out of the Bible to help you with clobber passages. That's one of the only reasons that I make use of the Bible, is to defend myself and those that I care about in this way of life against bigotry and against misuse of texts that really, other than, as you said, be nice to one another, are misused to control people these days, even more so now than when they were first written. And it's just horrible, really. That people would do such a thing. You know, it's like taking that is really, really weird. Taking the Ladybird book that tells the story of Red Riding Hood and using it as a reason why we should kill wolves.
Yes. Yeah, it is. Oh, hang on, I'm gonna have to put your comment up.
Yeah, I was trying to read it
properly. If I was awake, you know, just look at, but I do believe the Old Testament. Yeah, I've heard that before. The Old Testament was written at a time, you've got to remember, from like almost pre-language, so it's an oral book in that sense. It was told to the, and then at some point was written down.
Yeah. However, there is a caveat to what Lee's saying. In actual fact, when you use the clobber passages about same-sex relationships, that's Paul, that's New Testament. There's quite a few in the New Testament. Remember that the Old Testament is the book that Joshua used in his life. He was a Jew, so therefore a version of the Old Testament. The reason it's there is, and this is actually going to agree with Lee, in many, many ways, because people talk about the second coming and talk about Jesus being there too. When people get really, really antsy about it, they'll say that they will quote Jesus on the Mount saying, "I did not come to change the law," referring to the Old Testament. "I came to fulfill it."
Yes.
Now, there is a school of thought that believes that that fulfillment was his dying on the cross. There is a school of belief that believes that that fulfillment is what happened between dying on the cross and rising again. And there are those that believe that that fulfillment will come when he comes back for a second time. Now, when Jesus talks, no, don't ever apologize, because this is fun. When Jesus talked about the fulfillment of the law rather than the replacing of the law, people use that against us. People use that as an excuse to keep the Old Testament. I believe it's important to know where things come from. So I believe it's important to have the Old Testament so you can know what cultural influences had impact on them that were there. Do I believe that it's important to follow the rules and everything? Depends, because I actually think the 10 Commandments are pretty cool and fairly easy to follow and fairly basic if you're a decent person. It's all about what you can take from it for me, really. All I will say is when it comes to the fulfillment of the law, he means fulfilling prophecy, fulfilling the laws of the prophets and those prophecies that were laid out about this being that would come from the Great Spirit. On that subject, when was the second coming? Because he was born, he died, he rose again. In my view, that was the second coming. However, people will then quote Revelations. Revelations is not a story about Jesus coming again in 2,000 years. It was talking about the Roman Empire and how rubbish they were to people coming in, taking over their culture and destroying things. And the dragon was the emperor. And there's a lot of cultural proof behind that. There you go. And this is the thing. He died. He went down and harrowed hell. In other words, that he broke the locks. He smashed the locks. Said, "You are only here because people have told you to be. Get your backsides up there. Go and enjoy eternal life. I'm busting the locks. I'm leaving the doors open. Nobody's to stay in here anymore because there's no point. Get yourselves straight up to heaven." He then came back to prove that by physically coming and telling for 40 days that he was this living spirit made manifest and had come back to the physical world to say love is good and great and be nice to one another. And still, the whole gospel of Nicodemus was yanked out because it said hell's a bad thing.
Yeah.
You know,
I also think some of the stuff that when people say to me, you know, that the fact that Jesus came to fulfill negates the whole of the Old Testament. I think a lot of that comes from the phrase he used, "I give you these commandments above all else."
Yeah.
Love the Lord thy God above all others and love thy neighbor as thyself. So I think that's where some of that comes from, the fact that he says he's here to... Bye, Mario. But don't, like Nick said, don't ever apologize for keep interjecting, because that is why we are here. This is what we do. And that's why we've been on today, because Spirit knew people out there needed to hear things. And so I thought, hang on, we'll get those two on and we'll get them to...
we'll take charge of their vocal cords and make use of them.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And I would say, even when I'm on doing a live service, if there are questions that come up, put them in there, and if we can't answer them straight away, we'll get back to you at another time and answer the questions, because it's important. Because
It is.
a lot of people, I did it myself. I was Church of England. I went to church 3 times a week and twice on a Sunday. And when I came out, I felt that distance from God, and I didn't understand why. And I love somebody to the bottom of my heart, and the fact that it's a man made me question everything I'd read, because I thought, how can this be? How can the love I feel and the relationship I have with God be wrong? I don't get it. And then I made that connection. It's my relationship with God and with Michael, and that's what's important. And that's what I always say to people when they question, no matter what their faith, in your heart of hearts, how do you feel your relationship is with God? And 9 times out of 10 they say absolutely fine.
Yeah. It is a personal relationship with God. Yeah. And the example that I need a piece of paper. Hang on. I'm feeling visual today. Let me just so piece of paper here. Right, it's a post-it note, I know. Right, so this is going to be very basic, but I use the jigsaw puzzle analogy, and I'm actually going to show it. Right, so this is God, and God was really, really bored in the beginning because it was on its own. It was the only thing in existence, so it broke itself down. So, sacrilege! I'm ripping out the word of God, but I'm not. This is what God did. It broke itself down into smaller pieces so that it could examine itself and understand itself in more detail. And our job as human beings on this earth is to figure out where we, as those individual parts, I had similar problems, so I won't go into them now. But our job is to figure out where we fit in the grand scheme of God understanding itself. Because when you examine the smaller little bits in more detail, you understand the whole picture a lot better. So what God did was break itself down into tiny little bits that are called human souls, so that it can examine and understand itself, because your personal relationship with God is you helping God understand the aspect of itself that you represent. And so everything you feel, love, compassion, no matter who it's to. I even say that atheists these days are God's reaction to religion and what it's been used to do in its name. So I always have great conversations with atheists, because when I tell them that they're a part of God, they get grumpy. But then when I explain why, they laugh and have a good giggle with me. Yanni, bless you. It must be really, really late where you are. Have a lovely evening. Dear, oh dear. I didn't realise it was so late for you. Have a wonderful night and sleep. But yeah, so God is a jigsaw puzzle. We are the pieces trying to figure it out. So Yanni, actually, before you go, if you haven't gone, your disdain for the Bible and wanting to sleep and switch off is God's reaction, saying, oh, not that again. Because it's just one tiny aspect of an understanding of a great spirit. And my part of God is, but why would they write that stuff? And so all of us together, we can understand it. Bali, wow, lovely, lucky you. I'm off to here tomorrow because I've got another online to do, so I shall not be travelling as far as you, that's for sure. But yeah, we are all very relevant very important pieces of a great big puzzle trying to figure itself out. And so our thoughts always matter, and our thoughts always make up the universe. So humor, love, positivity, and plenty of questions. That's all that matters.
It does. And I think there we've come full circle again.
Yes. I think we've gone round and round the road, round and round the garden like a teddy bear. 1 step, 2 step, tickly under there.
Later, dear, later. No, thank you for your engagement today, Nick. Thank you for your engagement, all you who've watched and all those who will watch at some point, I hope, and get something. And if you are watching in the future and you have a question about something that's been said, drop it into us anyway and say, what's your feed from whatever day? 28.
I do. Yes, I do tend to do 3-minute answers, which is really, really difficult.
Hello,
hello, gorgeous. Hey, hello, darling. I tend to do 3-minute answers, which Tony, is really, really difficult for me on TikTok for individual questions. And quite often, if I'm doing something like, for instance, tomorrow I'm doing Monday brunch at 11 online. If people have spoken to me out the week, I will try and get those answers in. So we before the show, we'll sit and say, what are we going to talk about, like you and me? What are we going to talk about? And so somebody asked this. It's going to be about that. And that's the way we can get the messages that people want answering out. Because at the end of the day, if we talked about what we wanted to talk about rather than what people needed to hear, we'd be in trouble.
We would.
It's just fortunate. What we are encouraged by Spirit to talk about is what people need to know and have. I hadn't got anything planned other than going for lunch with Mother, and it's still early, so don't worry. I've got Nigel's gone to see his dad today, so I've got the place to myself apart from the bunnies downstairs, so I'm free as a bird.
Bless you, Lee. Thank you so much for that. But well, thank you all again for watching, for engaging with us, for listening to us. You may agree with us. Could you add me so I can follow your lives, Rev Nick? Daniel Carter.
Yes, of course. Yes. Let me write that. Let me get the second version of the Great Spirit with another post-it note and write your name down so that I don't forget.
Oh, Suzanne, I'm sorry. I'm sorry you didn't get an answer.
Oh, bless you. You can watch again.
It was a long, convoluted chat, Suzanne. And if you want to watch it back and you've got any questions, comments, like we were just saying, drop them to us and we will get round to them at some point. I'm going to schedule in some more lives, mediumship lives. So, yeah, I like that, Nick. Very good. And Mom's saying, what do you want?
Have you got any tuna? Because I don't know, I fancy some of Nan's tuna and onion sandwiches.
Yeah. Anyway, let's go. So, thank you all. Good night. Good night. No.
Good
afternoon.
It depends.
I will close us down in prayer, and then we will see you soon. Great Spirit, Father, Mother God, we thank you for this engagement that we've had this afternoon. We thank you for our spirit guides and supporters for being around us to help us to answer the questions and to reach out to those in need today. We now hand back to you all that is rightfully yours, all the love, the honor and the glory. And I ask that any healing energies go out around the world to those who are sick and suffering. And as Nick says, when in times of stress and when the road is hard, we ask not that you move the mountain, just give us the strength to climb. Amen.
Amen. Thank you.
Goodbye, everybody, and thank you so much.
Love you all.
Tomorrow, where can people catch you?
So tomorrow, 11 o'clock SPTV. I'm standing in for Alison on Monday brunch. It's my week off from my show this week, so I'm only on Monday. But yeah, Monday brunch, SPTV, 11 a.m.
Thank you. See you later.